Hey guys, it's Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Welcome back to my channel. So you guys can see here, I'm getting ready to paint in my Hobonichi Cousin, and I already realized I'm on the wrong day. So I will be using basically the same inks that I have for my currently inked, minus Murasaki Shikibu, because I finished that sample. So here are the inks that I will be using. So I have Pilot Iroshizuku Aji-Sai, Ferris Wheel Press the Velvet Ballet, Ferris Wheel Press Storied Blue, and Sailor Tinterias Homemade Tortilla, and Sailor Ink Studio 237. So I want to keep using the inks that I have as currently inks so that it'll be easier for me to match when I'm actually writing in my journal entry. So I'm gonna do this whole video as a voiceover because trying to paint and talk at the same time is impossible for me. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is actually put the ink in this little plastic, what is this called? It's palette holder. I got this from Michael's knowing that I would be testing out some fountain pen inks, and this is great because I can have each ink in its own little well and then use the middle portion to mix different inks. So the first flower that I am going to paint here is the iris, and I learned how to paint this from Jenna Rainey on YouTube, and I love this because it really is about the mixing of the fountain pen inks. You can see here at the bottom I've created a little bit of a skirt using the homemade tortilla ink, and then added some of the Aji-Sai to it, and then I actually created a little bit of a brown to make it a little darker, and then there I'm creating the top part of the flower, adding a little bit more brown. This really is a whimsical version of an iris because it is about the mixing of the different colors and getting the different combinations, and then adding the branch at the bottom there. Really, really beautiful floral. I love this one so much, and really easy to do actually. So now that that is dry, like you can see the difference in there. It did, yes, leak through that page, but I don't mind that too much because of how I will write on top of it. So now moving on to Tuesday and Wednesday. The next florals I'm going to paint are actually very easy to do as well if you want to practice. This is going to be roses, and it really is about light pressure, lots of pressure, and then light pressure again. So little pressure, lots of pressure, and then little pressure, so that you get the difference in the brush widths. And the inks that I'm using in this one are Ferris Wheel Press the Velvet Ballet, and then the other rose is going to be done with Ferris Wheel Press Storied Blue. But really, the easy drills that you can practice with these are basically C curves, and you're working on the pressure of your brush. So you start with a very light pressure, and then you push down a little bit more on your brush to get the thicker strokes, and then lift up your brush to finish off the petal. Really, I guess, easy floral to start with because you can practice doing circles with just the tip of your brush so that you're getting the tiniest little bit of detail, and then you work towards adding that pressure, similar to what you would do with a brush pen, really, that you would do a lot of pressure going down and a little pressure going up. So for roses, it really is about the light pressure, lots of pressure, and then a light pressure again, that you get the difference in the petals and the brush strokes. And I'm repeating the same florals here on the right hand side. And the difference with fountain pen ink versus regular watercolor is that, one, I'm also using Tomoe River paper, which is different from watercolor paper. So the inks are going to react differently than watercolor paper or watercolor paint would. But then with the Tomoe River paper, which is made for fountain pen ink, the way that the ink pools is going to be different for sure. So that's one of the things that I'm still learning. I'm trying not to put too much ink or too much water on my brush so I can really get the color that I want. But sometimes it's nice to add a little bit more water so you get a more diluted color. And here I'm actually trying to mix homemade tortilla with a little bit of the Storied Blue to get a different sort of green. That's also one of the fun things that I've been playing with, is mixing different colored fountain pen inks to get a different shade of color. So the next set of florals that I'm going to do are actually going to be, I think they're Ranunculus, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I mean, these are very loose watercolor flowers. Oh my goodness. And here it is about the little pressure, lots of pressure, little pressure again, so that you're creating the different size petals that look more like teardrops. And then you're creating that fourth petal underneath more like a C curve, a bigger C curve. And the inks that I'm using in this one are Pilot Iroshizuku Aji-Sai, and then I'm also using Sailor Ink Studio 237. And I really liked the effect of these two flowers, but I still feel like I could improve a little bit on these to really get the effect that I want. It really is about learning the pressure of your hand for each brush stroke, and that is what I'm hoping to improve. And then I'm adding a little bit more pigment to my brush so I can add a little bit more detail into the middle. And then I'm going to repeat the flowers on the other side here. I've added a little bit more fountain pen ink to the brush and then added a bit more water so that I can dilute the ink a little bit. But you can see where the ink pools. The ink pools when I lift up my brush. So I have to learn how to distribute that a little bit more evenly so that it doesn't look like all the ink just goes to the top of the petal. And there I am finishing off with Sailor Ink Studio and then adding a little bit more detail to the middle. And I actually used a brush that was drier to distribute the ink a little bit. And then for the green here, I'm actually using Pilot Iroshizuku Chiku-Rin. I wanted a little bit more of a springy green to go with these florals because they look more spring than anything. And then I'm adding a little bit more detail here as well. So then moving on to the last florals, I decided to combine everything that I had created other than the iris and make a whole bunch of florals. So first making a rose with the Sailor Ink Studio 237, and then I'm going to add a little bit more detail into the middle there. I really like the way that this rose looks once it's all done. You get the different shading, but also with Sailor Ink Studio 237, it is a bit more of a chromo shading ink, so you do get all of the different levels of that ink. And then adding a ranunculus using Ferris wheel press Storied blue. Again, the effects that you see with fountain pen ink when you paint with it, obviously, when you're writing with fountain pen ink, you only see the ink over a small surface area, but when painting, you really get to see the effect of the paint and all of the different layers in that paint, which is why I'm really enjoying this. And then the second ranunculus there with Pilot Iroshizuku Aji-Sai. And then I'm going to add a little bit more detail to each of these florals by adding a little bit more fountain pen ink to the brush and making sure that it is a little bit more saturated. And then here I am using Pilot Iroshizuku Chiku-Rin to add the leaves. And then I'm trying to think about the best way to create this bunch without making it look crowded is I think the word. But then I'm creating these little spiky florals with the Sailor homemade tortilla. And it's nice to actually see all of these inks together in one bunch because I realized they all work really, really well together. And then I'm adding a little bunch of florals here using, I think this one's Aji-Sai as well. I wasn't a big fan of this one. I really need to learn that specific brush stroke with those tiny little florals. And then, I don't know if you see it here, but in a second here, I am going to smudge it. Of course I am, because that's just me. And then I'm going to do the same bunch on Sunday, trying to work on the placement of the florals. I think that's another thing I want to improve upon is how I'm creating these bunches. And then I'm creating a ranunculus with Storied blue. I really love Storied blue. I think I have a tiny little bit of it left over, or I finished it. I cannot remember. I can't remember if I finished it or not. I have to check. And then adding some more leaves, and then I will add the spiky little florals using homemade tortilla. I love this ink. Absolutely love this ink, especially in a painting. Really, really good in a painting. And then the last thing I'm going to add is some more of those tiny little dotted florals, which I don't know the name of. And then I'm finished with my bunch, just adding a little bit more detail here. So overall, this whole process really took me, I would say, about an hour or so, because I did have to wait for each page to dry, but I really love the overall effect. So here is a quick flip through of all of the painted spreads so far. So there is the iris. I actually really love this one, and I love the way that that bleeds. And then the roses for Valentine's Day. Yes, you can see that, but then once I write over it, it won't make too much of a, like you won't even really see it too much. And then I don't actually know what the names of these are. Are they ranunculuses? I'm basically just practicing the strokes, and I really love the effect of the flowers from the other pages coming through. And then on the last page, just doing bunches of the roses and the ranunculus and trying something new. And I smudged it. I can't believe I did that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and journal in it for the week and then show you guys once it's all done. So let's do a quick flip through of my journal at the end of the week. So I actually decided to use a different color inks in there instead of just doing all black. I used the Sailor Tinterias collaboration, and this was the homemade tortilla, which is also the color that I used in here. And I really like the way that they complement each other. And then I added a picture in there. Yes, you can see a little bit of the shadowing and bleed through from the other page, but I almost see that as a design element. I really like it. And then for Tuesday and Wednesday, when I made the roses with Ferris wheel press, the Velvet Ballet, as well as Storied Blue, I used Storied Blue that is currently inked in my Bennu Euphoria, and I really like that. Yes, there is a little bit of, I guess, weird shadowing that happens here, but again, it's almost a really different effect that it takes. There's not as much on this side, so you don't see the effect as much here, but I really like the way that the painting and the ink go together. And then for Thursday, Friday, where I used Pilot Iroshizuku Aji-Sai with Sailor Ink Studio 237, and I used Pilot Iroshizuku Chiku-Rin here. The ink that I wrote with was Sailor Ink Studio 237, and I really like that effect. Again, using complementary ink, so basically using the same ink color that I wrote with and painted with. And then lastly for Saturday and Sunday, I created little bunches here, and I really wanted to use the homemade tortilla again. And then for here, I had a bigger picture that I printed and didn't fit anywhere, so I actually just created a little flag that comes out like this, and I really like the effect of the inks together with the painting and just the way that the pages sound once you've done all that painting is just amazing. All right, but that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you like this video and want to see more painting videos, again, let me know in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have yourselves a great day.